and Mana, and I'm sure they'll be around if anyone has any follow-up questions. But we must move on to our next session. So we're going to have a panel discussion with some more industry experts. And the topic is, how do LLMs and AI impact the cybersecurity landscape? So I'm going to introduce your moderator, who is the Director of the Research Chair for Cyber Defense and Protection of Personal Information, or CyberPro, and Associate Professor at Quebec University, and his panelists. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Femi Jafar and panelists.
Hello, everyone. So I'm so happy to be here to talk about the LLM, generative AI. Today we have with us Darine. Ameyed. She's adjunct professor at University of Quebec at Chicoutimi, and she's a researcher, also an adjunct professor at Sherbrooke University. We have Kevork, Belgen. He's director of the security at Scotiabank. Suman, Phogat, director of detection, engineering, and automation from BMO, Bank of Montreal. And we have Martin Guy Richard. He's the CISO from the city of Montreal. We are here today to talk about LLM, generative AI. In the last 2 years, it's getting a lot of interest from people. People are happy that they're using tools to create knowledge, to create text, music, pictures, images. And the question here is why we should care about the security of all these new tools, new services. Why we should think that maybe there is some risk related to these tools. So I would like to start with you, Martin. What do you think about, from the point of view of a city, using this tool? What kind of risk that can come with that?
Good question, Femi. You know, the city of Montreal is like every other user. We're going to be probably the last one using it, like my mother or my father. So, as we know, an LLM and all this science, it did not exist 1 year or 2 years and a half ago for us, not for researchers and everybody else, but for us, the mere user, it did not exist. So because it's so new, we don't really understand how it works. We don't really understand how our data is going to be used when we train an LLM. So for us in cybersecurity, one of the biggest risks is data exfiltration, data leakage. What will happen with our data once we feed an LLM? Where does it go? How will it be used? Will it be contained? Like, let's just use an hypothetical example. We train an LLM at the City of Montreal. Everybody at the City of Montreal is using it. Police department, fire department, HR, us in IT, finance, and so on. So when the police department puts a data set or train an LLM with a data set, what will I be able to see? Where will it go? So for us, one of the biggest risks is data leakage, data exfiltration. And you know, in Quebec, because of the Loi 25, Law 25, we have to think about all of these risks related to data.
Yeah, thank you. Suman, are you sharing the same point of view and point of risk related to LLM and generative AI in banking?
Yes, the same thing, right? The risk, anytime you're user-facing, banking is highly regulated for a reason. There's a huge impact to the users. From an LLM standpoint, there is a threat that, there's so many LLMs released out there, but if you don't do the due diligence, and somebody in the previous panel actually called that out, is companies that are building these large language models need to have governance in their place, because there is already malware that can be injected into foundational models. Imagining getting a model like that and building on top of it, without thinking about security, you're opening the risk, and that's the scare. So I totally agree with Martin. That's the first step you have to understand, and then the data loss risk and the privacy concerns are pretty big.
Yeah, so there is a risk regarding the control of data, the using of this data, the sharing of this data. What else from the point of view of banking? What do you think about LLM, other risks that can come with LLM and generative AI?
I think one of the themes here is data exfiltration. I would be very, very mindful of the fact that these models, that specifically LLM models that we use, can be used against us as well. I'm sure you have heard about data poisoning. You've heard about how LLMs can be used also to capture the data, exfiltrate the data behind the scenes. That's a very, very serious topic for us as well.
Yeah. So risk regarding data, and poisoning of data. So this opens the door to think about, are this LLM secure itself? Are they risky itself? This algorithm, these methods, these tools? What do you think, Darine, point of view of research? What do you see in research kind of risk related to LLM?
I think a lot of research folk will not be happy hearing this. Yeah, for sure, LLMs are risky, and especially when we are including them or taking them in the point of systems. If you are building around those LLMs some application, because LLMs is not everyone own an LLM for now, especially like the foundation model. And a lot of them, we use them on a system through API. But I think the big risk I see here when we build product around using those open LLM or open, like they are not fully open because we see the parameters are open, but not the data they are trained on open, which in the point of view of a system, it's the data, the model, and the outcome. But to be able to judge the security and the safety of the use, you need to have what it trained on, how it's trained, and if it's not in line with the task you want to contextualize on. This is the main risk I see, is how we are using and how we think those foundation and LLM will solve specific problems that they are, as a model, they are not meant to be for specific. They are just a foundation. We need to think about it when we include it to a system on the whole workflow about the process they are treating, and that process, what's the impact of that process on the full work process in an organization or in a workflow for a business process. And by design, I think a lot of those models are not designed, like the security is not by design. We develop the model, and after when we start putting them on a system to solve some problem, the risk it's raised, you know? And this is, I think it's a call for how we can make LLMs or Gen AI and the application around the security and the safety. It's by design, and I think this is still an open research question today, and a lot of researchers are more aware about how we can build new approaches around those models to be secured by design.
Yeah, thank you. Kevork, can you share with us some lesson learned from adapting, using LLM, generative AI, other AI technology in your organization?
Sounds good. So I think at Scotiabank, we have done a good job of understanding how we need to use LLM specifically and how we need to collaborate across the organization. We have a cross-functional team that looks at the risks involved and the applicability of the products that are out there, and how we need to think about deploying across our organization. Generally speaking, I think for any organization to be, a large-size organization, to be successful in deployment of a technology like this, you essentially need a couple of things. One is that senior leadership buy-in and their sponsorship, and then second function is the governance around how you deploy the technology and how you work across the organization. We have been in a lucky position to be able to do that. Yesterday, I think Yannick was here, our Chief AI Officer, talking about a bit of this. And Yannick and I connected and worked very closely on the topic. So that collaboration between security, between other teams and the AI organization is definitely fundamental for a successful deployment of a technology like Gen AI and LLM. It's good to have all the experts here because you guys know the differentiation between AI and how it evolved to be Gen AI and LLM. And in cyber, I think sometimes we mix them up a little bit. But we will talk about this maybe in the next few questions.
Yeah. Suman, are you following some policy? Do you have some policies in your organization regarding the use or the creation of knowledge using LLM and generative AI?
So at BMO, what we have done is we have a whole data analytics organization that spearheads any directions in that space. We have done use NLP. We have built ML models. With LLMs, what the team is trying to do is get the ideas together and build the right stakeholders to the table and take a risk-based approach. So we have POC ideas, we are running them with the idea that what are the risks that we should be considering and making sure our risk partners and our legal partners are aligned, and cyber has a seat at the table too. So rather than rushing to implement, we are taking that safe approach of saying, let's safeguard it, let's be more comfortable and know what our space is where we are operating, so we are more comfortable using these capabilities as we move forward. So for us, it's more safety than speed, that's the focus.
What about the city? How you deal with LLM? Do you have guidelines, policies?
Well, I feel like I have the same question, but before answering your question, I'm going to do a step backwards. As you know, we're a local government, and nothing moves fast in IT and local government. It's not because we take our time. The thing is, we use citizens' money, we have laws, we have regulation and everything, and when we initiate a project, we need to make sure that it's going to be able to end up with something. So, speaking about AI, we started about 8 years ago doing small AI project with machine learning. We were not up to the deep learning, but we did some machine learning, image recognition for Espace pour la Vie, one of the museum we have. We did a prediction algorithm for fire risk, and we did some machine learning stuff also for snow trucks. So we did some small project, and we were moving forward with other projects, and then boom, ChatGPT came up in the news, and it's going to revolutionize everything. So we had to adapt. And of course, we had pressure from the elected representatives, understandably. They read the news, they do stuff like, they read stuff like everybody else. So they wanted us to have a strategy on how we're going to implement AI at large at the City of Montreal. So that's what we're working on. Okay. We're not ready yet for using LLM. Yes, of course, we have Microsoft Copilot, we have some license of Microsoft Copilot. We cannot deploy it at large because, like I said, we need to understand what are the risks of using a tool such as LLM. And maybe in the future, we're going to train or fine-tune our own LLM. LLM, I understand it's not done for a specific reason, but we can train them, we can fine-tune them, or make them for a more specific reason than what they have been created for. So for us, we're moving forward, but at the speed of a local government. We need to analyze, understand everything. Where will it fit in the city? Will it be good for administrative purposes or good for the police department? So we're analyzing everything, and then we're going to move, well, slowly but surely.
Yeah, thank you so much. If I'm a decision maker in one organization, and I would like to follow maybe some guidelines, some published guidelines, I don't know, maybe standards, do you have this kind of thing regarding the using of LLM and generative AI? What do you think there? Do we have some guidelines, published standards or suggested white book how to use LLM and in organizations?
I think we still have the good judgment of human being in every different organization. What's the purpose, what's the mission of organization? Because we cannot have a guideline for it can go for everything. we have like main lines. We see it on ethical charts and where for what we don't use some stuff, especially it's unknown. Me personally, I had a chance to work in big organization, and I don't talk about their name to them, like I will not say the name, but and it's a big unknown. I will say like bring it down this risk, like it's risk management and not risk avoiding, because we also don't deal with LLM just we know what is used, because a lot of tools we are using today on our organization have hidden AI empowered by LLMs. And let's start from that point. If I didn't see the thing, I will need to work on two things: the awareness, and tell people what I don't want them to use a tool for, because that is a high risk use. And the second part, it's like raise the knowledge of everyone on the organization, because AI today is not a closed area just a specialist is dealing with. Anyone today can go to a ChatGPT online and put an answer for an email. But if that email has some information, it's confidential, maybe that is not a good practice. And they need to be aware about it. And the second part is how I can, after develop a specific guideline for my organization, depend on the sector, depend on the mission, and depend on the risk taking, and bring it down also to where I can take risk, because we don't want to put gates for innovation, but we want to manage the gates of innovation and growth of our organization and our maturity on adoption of AI, because yeah, it's a huge productivity tools. It will bring a lot of opportunity, but just manage it in a good way. And I will give like a simple good example. I have a 4-year son. I don't want him to eat sugar. How I can avoid sugar? It's everywhere and it's hidden. What I can try is to not give him a candy with like 35 grams of sugar. It's more about managing risk, because we know if something it's high risk and I will use that tools which with a note of non-knowing, I'm taking a huge risk. But I will say, no, don't use AI. I'm an AI scientist. I spend my time building AI. I will make everyone, I want him to use AI on productivity to have a better use, but how we can control our awareness to use those tools for the good and avoid the bad, because a lot of other side too, they are using those same tools for generating today more thread. They are personalized. They clone voices. They do phishing based on a lot of information. LLM today, it's a huge tool on phishing risk. And in research, and with family we are collaborating about that, is like in research we have seen Alexa voice and texting, it's also built based using LLMs too.
Yeah.
It's more about building guideline depend on the organization, because I don't think we will have a guideline for every single use and every single organization, because it depends on the sector. It's not the same guideline we will put it in health sector, the same on banking or finance or cities. It's different uses, different application, different risk management guidelines.
It's true. In fact, social engineering cyber attacks like phishing, deepfake, still the first channel of cyber attacks in organizations. And with generative AI, with LLM, it's more easy to create such kind of attack channel. You talked about opportunities. What kind of opportunities you find in using LLM generative AI? I would like to learn more about you regarding your organization. For example, for banking, what kind of opportunities?
So I think you're absolutely correct. How generative AI technologies are being used by the bad actors, and how it's used to improve their phishing emails, their capabilities in that space. In the past, you would receive an email that didn't read like English or French, and you would read it again, make sure you are not clicking anything on that email. And even our phishing security solutions are designed in a way to measure the temperature and then decide if this email is fake or not. Today, the bad actors use Gen AI, and they can write an email just like that so quickly, and they can attack your organization. Another thing they can do is reconnaissance. In the past, this used to be quite a lot of resource-intensive activity. Today, with Gen AI and LLMs, it becomes relatively easy. Coding, writing malware, it becomes so much easier for these folks. There was a barrier to entry to this business. With Gen AI and LLM, it became easier to create these attacks. On the other side, we can use AI, and we see our vendors doing this as well. We can use AI to do better with our cybersecurity tooling. Maybe there will be a point where we cannot catch deepfake. Maybe there will be a point where we cannot catch AI-generated, LLM-generated versus real. But AI capabilities within cybersecurity tooling, I think, is very helpful. We have been at security, our security operations centers, our analysts have been bombarded with thousands and thousands, a lot more than I can even imagine, attacks and incidents to analyze. You cannot build SOCs so big to handle all of this, but with use of AI in your cybersecurity tooling, definitely we are making good strides and we are improving how we can solve cybersecurity problems.
Yeah, yeah. Are you using LLM in your organization in one specific service, and you think that you cannot provide the service anymore without Gen AI or LLM? You have one example like that.
So we haven't started, so that's what I was saying. From an LLM standpoint, it's more of a POC phase. But from an AI standpoint, like the precursor, right? A lot has been done, and we have identified opportunities in retail banking where we can help customers better. But it has to be very well managed from the input and output standpoint. Now, from a cyber standpoint, you can manage LLM integration into your environment. You manage that environment. But you don't manage the outside that is interacting with your environment, right? And that is the space that we protect. And that's becoming more and more challenging. And as Kevin said, phishing attacks, earlier it would be like, we would say, look for spelling mistakes and all that. That no longer happens. Those emails are really, really strong. So now your education, your training has to change to adapt to that model, to help your employees, even your customers, to understand as you're interacting, the landscape is changing, be careful, right? So training is a very integral part of this whole LLM space, because the landscape has just changed. People who can enter, the barrier to entry has just dropped.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you think that by learning more about these tools, generative AI, LLM, taking care of all this different risk, vulnerability before adapting it, will help you also to learn more about your organization, your vulnerability, your maybe point of risk that are different from other organizations? What do you think about that?
I did not understand the question.
Is that helping you also to learn more about the risk, the vulnerability related to your organization, to learn more about your organization as a city, as a government?
Of course.
Yeah.
It helped us learn a lot about how we use data, how we're going to use AI. It's not something that we're going to implement out of the blue. By analyzing and by understanding how LLM works, we're going to understand how we do stuff, because we want to have a perfect match in the, like you asked the other question, the opportunities on how we can use LLM. We need to understand how we work before understanding how to use LLM, and then we're going to be able to understand the risk in using LLM, and then, well, it doesn't exist, but let's say it's going to be a perfect match.
Yeah. We said understanding LLM, controlling our data, understanding what we have as active owners. What else? What other tips that we should put in the beginning of the list to have maybe secure and safe Gen AI and LLM? What do you think? What else?
I will come back to the system point too. The LLMs is part of another system. And security, the security of the model, the use is related to how it's implemented in the whole life cycle of this implementation. start, firstly, this will run to a hardware. Like this hardware, or the hardware layers need to be secured, which is still a lot of work to do that on the hardware security and accessibility for hackers. The second part is how we will use that hardware and that LLM, and for which problem to solve and which process to put in, and what's the outcome, and how I can observe the behavior of that, like that system or architecture there, and see if anything is going wrong on the performance. Because sometimes performance is not just related to, sometimes, and here I can give example about some research we are doing. We are using some models in some cyber-physical system. And sometimes we try to see if we empoison those models, and we do the hacker, like the white hacker work, to see how that will behave. Sometimes is not, and we give sometimes different contexts. And the shifting we are seeing is not related to the attack, but because the model is learning a new context and it's a normal behavior. And here we decide, okay, we need to have a better cognitive approach for observing those models, because sometimes it's not attack, it's not a cyber physical, or it's not a cyber criminal thing. It's just more, the model itself is changing the learning because the data is different and the context is different. And it's a lot of work to be done there to have a better designed system when it's on work. And that's part. I will not have like answer for all the question, because it's like, it's a big field and it's a lot of non-known too. And if we start like, don't take it just the model, because the model is still a lot of work to do there to make those models more efficient and more secure. But security is not just a model problem. It's like a whole system problems, because it's different layers that model do a purpose in a big chain, which is the process.
Yeah, this is my last question before getting maybe questions from the public. Coming back to how to secure and to make it more safe, LLM and GenAI, from the point of view of a bank, what is your list of things?
I think the root. I think we should look at the root of this, and that root is essentially data itself. We need to think about how we handle data. We need to understand our data, and we need to be able to secure that data. A lot of our large-size enterprises, I imagine, have challenges in that space, and I think that's where we need to bake in some controls around development of AI models, also use of AI models. So that would be, in my opinion, again, part of that risk activity, the governance and risk function, where you think about how your data is being handled, data privacy implications of that data being used by AI models. I would start with that. The other thing I want to augment the opportunities side of the question that you asked previously. As I mentioned, the bad actors can develop things, but at the same time, we are also able to use AI LLM to lower the barriers to entry to the good side of the house, where you can also bring people to write that code without knowing, Python or scripting or anything. Right? You can ask a question, you can augment your controls around your overall enterprise, improve your cybersecurity posture.
Yeah, thank you. So we have experts from government, city, banking, academia. Do you have questions for them regarding LLM, GenAI, and the risk related to using or adopting LLM, GenAI in organizations? So, yeah.
Hi, thanks for such an important discussion. If we're going to have AI making decisions and taking actions within cybersecurity, if a false positive becomes a true positive, who would hold accountable? That's my question.
What do you think?
I think that's where
question.
I think that's where how we train AI models become really important. We need to have enough data on both sides. To Yannick's point, on a discussion few months ago, I'll say, do we have enough bad actors being successful kind of data so that we can truly train our models and be able to handle attacks properly? I think that would be an important question and point to raise with your security vendors.
I'll add something. I think we need to be able to explain the decision taken by an AI model. Us at the City of Montreal, we already use AI in our CM and so on.
As a black box, you know. We are using AI as a black box now.
It's a black box, the CM, the Security Incident and Event Manager, but still we understand the decision that it takes. So we need to be able to explain it. It won't be the fault of the AI. It's going to be the fault of the city at large. If it's a bad decision, it cannot be the fault of a system.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for cybersecurity, so it's going to be, in the end, myself.
Yeah.
But we need to be able to explain every decision that a system takes automatically. That's my take.
Explainability? Yeah?
You take me by surprise, Femi. I think, I would just add one point, AI can help us understand the threat they are made by AI too. And I will let you, to your creativity, because especially if we're talking about those viruses and malwares and criminals, they are using this intelligence to build more intelligent virus and malwares and attacks. I think by seeing hidden patterns, which we don't normally use when we analyze, that can be very useful. And we cannot make 100% decision, and confidence errors is always there. Maybe we loop the expert in some non-100% confidence level. But
thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a great discussion. Thank you.